Almost Kidnapped as a Kid by usernameiskraken. This happened to me when I was 7 years old. I come from a middle-class family in a developing country and went to school around 6 kilometers from my home, usually in the school bus. One day, the school bus broke down while I was at school. Not very unusual, but they couldn't find an alternative, so they called the parents asking them to pick the kids up after school, usually at 4 p.m. My dad was at work and couldn't come, and my mom didn't have any means to come pick me up. So, I told them that I'll walk to my grandma's place, which is around 1 kilometer away from school. My dad was reluctant at first, but he agreed and told me to call him as soon as I get there. This was a busy part of town and it's late afternoon, so there's enough traffic and people on the street, so it was an easy decision. And as I was walking alone, a random car slows down. The driver waves at me to stop and parks his car on the side of the road. He was dressed decently, and owning a car was rare back then, and he looked like a kind person too. He approaches me and starts speaking to me. He says he knows that the bus broke down and my dad sent him to pick me up. He knew my name, my parents' name, and the fact that I was going to my grandmother's place. He said it's no trouble for him and I can get on in the car, and he's heading in that direction anyway. At this point, something didn't sit right, and I told him that I'd rather walk back and he's welcome to walk with me leaving his car there. He was visibly upset and started insisting. That's when people on the street started looking at us because I was backing away from him, and I was dressed in my school uniform, mind you. He swears something under his breath and boards in his car and goes away. I reach my grandparents' house, call my dad, and ask him who was the person he sent. He started freaking out, leaves work and gets home immediately. I describe the man and nobody knows him. We reached out to the school to see if they informed anyone outside that the bus broke down. And we still don't know who that person was. I can't imagine what would have happened if I got into that car. Kidnapping for ransom was common in the area, and I'm very glad that my parents constantly told me to be very wary of strangers. Whoever that man was and whatever his intentions were, let's not meet again. This happened today. I am a mom to 2 young boys while attending online classes. My husband works nights, so any errands that I need to run during the day, my boys come with me. Today's errands included me running to my school's library for some books. My school has multiple locations and the closest one to me, unfortunately, is the one located in the sketchiest area. I figured it would be fine, since it's a college campus. I pulled up, loaded my boys in a stroller, and headed inside. As soon as I went in, I noticed the first floor was mostly a resource-type area and didn't see an elevator to the other floors, and going up a lot of stairs with a stroller is a near impossible task. I didn't want to give up, so I started just strolling to see if there was anything that I could use. I immediately noticed a woman at an information desk looking around, if not right at me. It weirded me out a bit because there were maybe a total of 3 other people aside from the very few workers. This woman appeared to be in her late 30s, while I am in my mid-20s with 2 young children. I browsed the aisles and this woman moved to an information desk closer to me. I decided to ask for help, so I make my way to the same desk to wait my turn. This woman turns and just stares at me for a solid 5 seconds. I was waiting for a smile or an awkward small talk, but it never came. Her phone camera was also pointed at me, so I started browsing again because I was uncomfortable. She kept looking at me and her phone was following me. I went to hide behind bookshelves for a bit and then made my way to the middle of the library. The woman finished at the desk, turned right towards me with her phone pointed at me, and is walking straight towards me staring daggers. I was extremely freaked out and confused. She walked right by and made her way to the elevator, which was nowhere near me. I am not confrontational at all, which I know I need to work on, but I built up the courage to talk to the same librarian she had, and I told them that I thought she was staring at me, maybe recording me, and it made me very uncomfortable. They told me they couldn't see because the monitor was so big, but also she was looking up stuff on her phone, totally brushing it off. I ended up leaving and constantly checking over my shoulder. I know this isn't super terrifying, but for someone with anxiety, it was pretty scary, also having 2 young kids with me. I would love to hear if anyone has any ideas what was going on. I heard her asking for some religious book. Also, the town itself is known for drugs, and I can't imagine someone actively seeking a young mom or kids would be at a college campus library on a Wednesday morning. Woke up to a stranger in my room by u/Kodak Panther. I went to college in a historic mid-sized city in Florida, and at that time lived in a duplex downtown, maybe 3 blocks from campus. The city is known to be pretty safe, and I lived in a pretty decent area with large historic homes near me. This all happened around 3 years ago. A little backstory that will become relevant. The duplex that I lived in had a front door that locked, and then both the upstairs and downstairs units had their own locking door. I lived downstairs and had 2 roommates, but this specific night, only one of my roommates was home. We knew the girls that lived upstairs but only really spoke to them in passing. When they moved in, we emphasized how important it was to us for them to keep the main front door locked, and they did a good job of doing so. So me and my roommate are in for the night, and knowing that the front door is locked, we smoked a few joints. At some point, we hear a knock at the front door and quickly realize the girls upstairs had ordered a pizza, and later on, it becomes evident that they never locked the front door after receiving their pizza. So we finally go to sleep in our own rooms, and since I had a queen bed, I would often sleep with my phone and laptop next to me in my bed. A couple of hours after I fell asleep, I woke up to a man standing over my bed. As soon as I realized that I'm not dreaming, I noticed that he is quickly moving my phone and computer off of my bed and moving my comforter, trying to get into my bed. I start to ask him who he is, what's he doing here, and just generally confused as I was still slightly high from before I went to sleep. And the only thing he said to me multiple times was that he was just trying to get in bed. At this point, I began to panic, as my mind obviously goes to the worst. I was hoping that maybe my roommate had invited some random Tinder guy over and that he had gone to the wrong room. But the more I questioned him, all he had to say was, "I'm just trying to get in the bed." I own pepper spray and a stun gun, but I had accidentally left them on a shelf that the guy was standing in front of, so there was no way that I would be able to grab them without escalating the situation. Realizing that I need to do something quickly, I blurted, There are 5 people who live in this house, and if you don't get the fuck out now, I will scream and they will all be here within seconds." Luckily, that was all it took to scare him off. I don't know if he had brought something with him or if he stole something from me, but I saw him grab something in the dark and run out of my room. And as soon as he left my room, I shut the door and locked it, and I tried to find my phone, but I couldn't find it anywhere. But then quickly realized that between my room and the front door is the room of my friend that was home. As scared as I was terrified that the guy had maybe gone into her room. So I grabbed my stun gun and a pocket knife, counted to 3, and ripped open my door. I ran into my roommate's room and she was fast asleep, and there was no evidence of the guy. I told her what happened, and she asked me if I was sure I wasn't dreaming. I began to question myself until I walked out of her room and saw that our front door was wide open. I went to my room to search for my phone, and finally, I find it hidden under a pile of clothes across the room from where I had left it. That sent a chill up my spine as I immediately knew for a fact someone had been in my house and my room while I was sleeping, and long enough to hide my phone, which only worsened my suspicions of his intentions. I ran back to my roommate's room, who at that point believed me, barricaded ourselves in the room and called 911. Within minutes, there were police cars swarming our street and yard, and they yelled for us to quickly leave the residence and run towards them. At least a dozen police officers came running in and searched every inch of our apartment, and woke up the girls upstairs and searched their apartment to ensure that the man had left. The officers then had me write a statement, and I gave them a description of the man, and to this day, I've never heard a single thing about the case. I feel incredibly lucky with the outcome of the situation, but the thought of his intentions terrifies me. And additionally, the fact that he was never caught scares me, as I would hate for anyone to have to go through the pure fear that I did. I will add, there is a chance that he was on drugs or mentally ill and had no bad intentions. However, because he was never caught, I will never know. And my mind will always assume the worst. Beat Up by a Gang by usernameiskraken. This happened in late 2000s when I was 12 years old. I grew up and lived in a developing nation, so many of the folks who read regularly here might not completely understand or relate to the circumstances in the incident, but I'll try my best to give any background necessary. I was never given permission by my parents to stay out after 7 p.m. for any reason, regardless of the requirement. A movie that ends at 6:30 p.m. and I was dropped home by my friend's parents? No. Study at my neighbor's house past 7 p.m.? No. So I was naturally very excited when I got permission to go watch a late-night movie with all my cousins and stayed the night at my grandmother's place. There were 6 of us together, 5 males and 1 female cousin. I was the youngest, the rest were all adults mid-20s. The movie finishes at 2 a.m. and we were asked to go straight from the movie theater to home, which was nearby. I was more excited to see the city late at night more than watching the new movie that was a big hit. We all went in 3 motorcycles to the theater and decided that once the movie was over, we would go to a cafe that was open 24/7 to have some ice cream. This was the only place that was still open and was relatively far away from my grandparents' house. I can't tell you how excited all of us were because this was a new place that opened up in my city and was very popular. My friends used to brag about how many times they visited the place and how beautiful the view of the city lake is in the middle of the night. And once the movie was over, we come outside. Except for the crowd from the theater, the roads were completely deserted and not a soul in sight. Only the streetlights lit up the roads filled with potholes and nothing. Not even the medical stores were open. My female cousin had extremely strict parents, so she declined to come and said she has to be home because her parents were waiting for her to get back. We all tried to convince her to come with us. We're 6 of us after all, but to no end. She was adamant that she had to be home, and we eventually decided to let her go. There were now 4 of us on 2 motorcycles and started riding towards the cafe. I was the pillion with my brother riding, and I noticed that one motorcycle was following us. It was easy as they were the only other people on the road. I told my brother immediately, and he said that they were probably going to the same place and just to ignore it. A little further, another motorcycle asked my cousin to stop and pretended to ask for directions. They stopped thinking these guys were lost and started giving them directions. And while we were talking to the guys asking for directions, 2 more motorcycles show up and surround us. Somehow, there were 8 of them suddenly. At this point, we realized that this was an ambush, but it was already too late. One of the guys pushed my cousin from the motorcycle onto the ground and started hitting him. The rest of us were trying to defend him. And once the fighting stopped, one of my cousins was bleeding all over. Then they started us to call our female cousin and tell her to come back. They had been following us from the theater. They said to tell her that they just need to talk to her. So we had to ask her to come back and that he needs to see her. At first we pretended that we had no women with us. We don't know what he's talking about. He told us that he will kill us all if we don't ask her to come meet us. The roads were abandoned, and the occasional car that goes on the road just passed by without slowing down. Most likely the people in the car were afraid of getting involved. The guys were clearly having fun, laughing while they punched us and kicked us. With no help in sight, one of my cousins punches one of the guys and yells, "Run!" And instinctively, we all run in different directions, abandoning our motorcycles on the street. They start chasing us on foot at first. They went back, got on their motorcycles, and then chased us through the streets. I didn't have a mobile phone with me, and I was unfamiliar with the area, so I ran randomly looking for a hiding place. I jumped a wall into a random person's house while the motorcycles drove by on the road looking for us. I don't know where the rest of my cousins were, especially the one who was bleeding badly. The house I jumped into was home to a huge dog who started barking at me, waking up the owners. They obviously assumed that I was there to rob them, but having one look at a 12-year-old boy in tears and clearly shaken, they asked me what happened. I explained everything and I told them that I had no idea where my brothers were, and they gave me a phone and I called up the police, who said that they will dispatch a patrol car and that we can expect it in 2 hours. I had all my brothers' numbers memorized, but I didn't want to call them as I was afraid that they might be hiding and a ringing cell might give it away. I thanked the kind people who offered to host me until the morning, but I had to get to my grandmother's place to find out if my cousins had made it back. I sneaked through the streets and found my grandparents' house. 2 of my cousins made it back, but my brother was still out there. Finally, He calls us and tells us that he is hiding and he will come back once the sun comes out and that there's a general crowd outside. Until dawn, the motorcycles kept passing by our house and we were afraid that they followed one of us home. And at dawn, my brother gets back and I was the only one uninjured. One of my cousins got stitches on his face and another one broke his ribs, and my brother had a hairline fracture. We all ran through the night and suddenly, all the strict imposition by our parents made sense to us. My brother called the cops too and no one showed up ever. There was no support from anyone, and I can't imagine what would have happened if my female cousin was with us. We never got a call back from the cops to ask us if we were fine, and I can't begin to imagine what would have happened if they caught one of us. Needless to say, we never went out anywhere late at night for a long time. And to the people who ambushed us and beat us up for fun, let's not meet again. Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate each and every one of you. But I would also like to thank my amazing patrons, my top tippers, and my dearest channel members. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it with all of my heart. If you want to support the channel further, you could also choose to become a patron, a tipper, or a channel member. But remember, it's appreciated, but never a requirement. I would also like to announce that we have merch now. The link is in the description of the video, along with all my other social media links, like my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and others. You can connect with me and send your stories there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and comments are highly appreciated. And remember, your fear feeds me.